So, I just got done watching How to Train Your Dragon 2. It's been sitting on my shelf since July, and just because of personal reasons and family things, I have not gotten a chance to watch it, but I've been very much looking forward to it. I've been saving it for an evening where I had, nothing to do, kids are in bed, house is clean, ready to go, because I didn't want to be interrupted. The first one, How to Train Your Dragon 1, or more accurately put, How to Train Your Dragon proper, is one of my favorite movies. I think it's great. The cinematography when Hiccup first takes Astrid above the clouds and they're looking at the moon, it's just beautiful, and the soundtrack is amazing, really, really great. So when I knew they were doing a sequel, I was really hopeful that they were going to do one that actually pushed the story forward. And I was glad to see that it begins, with a time jump, and we're now 5 years after the events of the first movie. But I'm getting too far ahead of myself. I actually first want to talk about the experience when I put the Blu-ray into the player. Yes, I want to go this far back. What annoys me a lot of the time about Blu-rays is that there's a lot of unskippable ads and a lot of sort of complicated menus to get through, FBI warnings, things like that. And it could take up to 5-6 minutes or more to actually get to a part where you can play the movie. But in this one, the first preview came up and there was an option down the bottom that said play movie. It said play movie, next preview, and something else. So I clicked play movie and it went right to the movie, and I really appreciated that. I'm old enough that I remember vividly VHS tapes, and I know that the experience with the VHS tape, obviously picture and sound had a lot to be desired. At the time, we didn't think so. You were watching a movie in your house. It was amazing. But being able to push stop and come back a week later and hit play, and you're exactly where you left off, is something that digital media can't compete with that. DVDs and Blu-rays, if you take it out of the player, some players do have a memory. If you put the same disc in, it'll say resume, but it's not every movie and it's not every player. I have yet to have found a combination that I can rely on that functionality. And I can say, I can take this disc out. I know when I put it back in, it'll go right back to where I left off. I do appreciate that Netflix has this. If you are watching a movie and you turn off your phone or your tablet and you come back, it knows right where you left off, which I do appreciate. But enough about that. I really appreciated being able to go right to the movie, and it definitely picks up 5 years later. Toothless and Hiccup are older and wiser, but it starts with that Burke bookend that I appreciated from the first movie. This is Burke. It's a wet pile of rock, and he sort of talks about it. And this time he says that we have something that no one else has: dragon racing. And it's a new sport that they invented to take advantage of the dragons, and the dragons seem to like it, and they're chasing sheep around, and they're throwing sheep into these buckets to keep score, and they can't find Toothless and Hiccup. It seems implied that if they were there, they would win every time. So they're not there, and the characters that we remember from the first movie are there. Obviously Astrid and Fishlegs, and then the two twins. I can't actually remember all their names. They're not memorable enough characters to me. I know their faces, and I appreciate sort of their comic interludes, but I don't remember all their names right off the top of my head. So Toothless and Hiccup are on this island, and well, first they're flying, and we find out that Hiccup has this sort of flying suit, and they're trying different maneuvers, and he's able to glide. It's sort of like a gliding suit. And they land on this island, and it turns out that they are mapping out their world, and their world is expanding. And because of these dragons, they can go farther in a shorter distance, a shorter amount of time. They can go greater distances. So they land on this new island, and he pulls out this map, and he unfolds it, and he's actually like charting it out, and he's saying, what should we call this? And I think he calls it Itchy Armpit, I think, because Toothless is kind of scratching at himself. And they see this giant, like, sort of piece of ice, and it really reminded me of playing a lot of different RPGs where you venture out of your starting zone and you have no idea what's going to happen. I know playing World of Warcraft, when you cross the border, and if you're primarily used to adventuring in like the Eastern Kingdoms, for example, and you go to Kalimdor for the first time, you have no idea what to expect. There's different races, different people, different enemies, different environments, and it's that sensation and that feeling of something new and unexplored that really appealed to me. And I appreciate that the movie went there, because if you have dragons, your whole world is opened up, and Hiccup is definitely taking advantage of that. So they're trying to explore, they're trying to see what is really around them. and they come across this band of, I think they were called dragon hunters. There's another name for them though, but they're basically hunting dragons for the antagonist of the film, who is apparently a very, very bad man. And his name was Draco, I think, or Drago. Yeah, Drago's Dragon Army. I will break you. Wasn't that Drago? So, Stoic, I know when we see him back on Burke, his beard has got some gray in it. And as soon as I saw the gray in Stoic's beard, I knew they were going to deal with mortality. I knew that, advancing at 5 years, Hiccup is growing up, and Stoic is getting older. So now he's looking for his replacement. And of course, his only son would be his natural heir. He wants him to take over as chief of Burke. No surprise, that's not what Hiccup is interested in. Hiccup wants to explore the world with Toothless and be free, and he talks about that feeling of freedom a lot. But Stoic really knows that, he is, Hiccup is growing up to be a good man, and he would be a good chief. He'd be a good leader for the people of Burke, because he understands their culture. I mean, he reinvented it 5 years before by taking dragons to being, their number one mortal enemy to their friends. So he would be a great leader. He'd be a great chief, but he doesn't want anything to do with it. He says, that's not me. That's not who I am. And as soon as I saw that gray in Stoic's beard, I knew this choice is probably going to be forced upon him sooner than later. And I do know that they're going to make How to Train Your Dragon 3, and that, the director envisions it as a trilogy, and he even likened it to Star Wars. But we'll get more into this later, because this is definitely The Empire Strikes Back, of course, of this trilogy. So I love the scenes of Hiccup and Toothless playing. Toothless is one of my favorite animated characters. Of course, he doesn't speak, but they gave him that feline playfulness and a lot of his expressions. And when he kind of opens his mouth and he's looking for a fish, or he rolls onto his back and you scratch his belly, things like that. Who doesn't want a Toothless? I mean, he is the coolest dragon, anyway, that I've seen. So I love Toothless, and I love the scenes when they're playing. And Astrid shows up with her dragon, and there's a scene of the two dragons kind of playing, and they're in the background kind of playing with each other, like two cats might, or two other kind of animals might. So I really appreciated that dynamic. Another character I want to touch on is Gobber, and of course he's played by Craig Ferguson. Craig Ferguson, for many, many years, was my late-night host of choice. I would DVR the show, and I would watch a couple of them at night, or even like on a Saturday afternoon, I would catch up with them. Of course, the show being on at 12:30, I didn't usually stay up quite that late to watch it live. And he would always joke that, it's the middle of the night, no one's watching anyway. But I always appreciated what he did. I liked his sense of humor. I liked his offbeat kind of deconstruction of the talk show genre. But in this movie, he's very funny. He plays a good character. He's not just comic relief, though. He actually has heart. And the character of Gobber, being Stoic's, I think, oldest and best friend, it really worked for me as a dynamic, and it was good to see Craig Ferguson come back to reprise the role. So when they go back to Burke, and Hiccup is telling his father about what happened with the dragon trappers, I think dragon trappers. Of course, they were able to escape, and he says, do you mean Draco Bloodfist? And Hiccup confirms that's the name that he heard, and Stoic is very, very, I don't want to say terrified, but he's very, very nervous. And this is something that I know one of it's something that I've seen done a lot, and Arshan Jaya pointed it out very well when he was doing his Star Wars ruminations, is that even before you introduce a character, how other characters react to this character gives you a load of information about what they're all about. So like Darth Vader, before we even meet the Emperor or know anything about him, when he knows that he's coming, all of a sudden it's a big deal, and he's very terrified. And I think it was in Empire, the Emperor is coming down the staircase, and Darth Vader, kneels before him. Darth Vader is someone at that point who had been built up to be, a badass, a villain, and we're scared of him. So if he's terrified of the Emperor, before we even know anything about the Emperor, we know enough about him to know that we should be scared of him too. So I liked how they did that here. Before we even meet Draco, or learn really anything about him. Stoic's reaction to just the mention of the name spoke volumes about what Draco was all about and how he should be feared. And as the movie goes on, Hiccup's optimism that he can, change him or change his mind about how he feels about dragons. Stoic says you cannot reason with this person, and Hiccup, he has this optimism that of course he can. He just has to show him what it's like to ride with Toothless, or to see what's happened to Burke. That dragons can be their friends, and he'll be able to change his mind. But we learned very early, by Stoic's reaction and by sort of even the way that the dragon trappers feared him, that this is not someone who Hiccup is going to be able to reason with. And of course, we know how it ends. I shouldn't have to say this, but on any of these reviews, if you haven't seen the movie, just be prepared for spoilers. I don't want to, I don't want to spoil the ending for anybody, but definitely we are going to get into the ending. So, right, so Hiccup is determined to change Draco's mind because he knows that, he's going to be coming for war against Burke, supposedly. So he says, no, I'm going to get to him first. I'm going to talk to him. And on the way, Hiccup and Toothless are flying through the clouds, and they actually come across another dragon rider. And this person has a mask and some kind of a full suit. And we just see them, I really love this shot, just coming up above the clouds, almost like they were riding on their own. Of course, we don't see the dragon right away. And Toothless and Hiccup are separated, and Toothless falls into the water, and we think he might drown. We don't know. Hiccup is taken by another dragon to this cave, and Hiccup is screaming, my dragon, he's drowning. I thought for sure at this moment that they were going to be separated for the rest of the movie, but very quickly Hiccup is brought back. They went down and they saved him, and we find out that this dragon rider, who seems to have a very similar relationship with dragons that Hiccup has. He was able to, scratch Toothless sort of under the chin or whatever, and kind of rub his belly. And he, this person has this way with dragons, and we find out very quickly that it's Hiccup's mother. And she was taken by dragons 20 years ago when Hiccup was a baby. A dragon came in and went up to his crib and didn't attack him, though. He was just playing with him. He kind of was just rocking him a little bit. And Hiccup looked into the dragon's eyes, and there was no harm there. And the mother recognized that. But of course, Stoic came in, being the Viking chief, and immediately attacked the dragon and started, screaming. And this turns out to be, it's the same dragon that the mother was riding, Cloudjumper, who to me looks like just a big kind of silly Muppet. Really cute, but definitely not overly intimidating. Very kind of cute, fluffy Muppet. So I did like Cloudjumper. So Stoic rides Skullcrusher, which is the perfect, I almost said Muppet, perfect dragon for Stoic. I think the Vast is what they call him, to ride. So the mother has become a crazy feral vigilante dragon lady, and for 20 years has lived with these dragons. And it turns out that there's like an ice king. There's a king of the dragons who lives in the mountain with them, and the babies kind of fly around him, and that's going to become important later. And the babies, they're the only ones who don't listen to him. But he can control the other dragons a little bit. So that's the king, and he's the one who made the ice sculptures sort of from before. The ice formations is a better word for it. So we're introduced to this new world, the character of Hiccup's mother, and I'm just going to call him the Ice King, just to make it a little bit more easy. And that's going to be in direct confrontation with the Alpha, who we'll meet very soon. So we're going to call him the Ice King and the Alpha. So after 20 years, basically never knowing his mother, he's reunited with her, and they're sharing sort of secrets and sharing stories, and Hiccup is bringing her up to speed on what's happened in Burke and how Burke has changed, and how the people of Burke have accepted dragons as their own, and now they're riding them, and dragon racing and everything. And the mother almost doesn't believe it. She says, "If only." But he's like, "No, really, this is what it's like. People have changed. Even Stoic has changed." So Stoic shows up on his dragon and walks up to the mother, and she's scared, like he's going to attack her or something. But I recognized immediately. He took off his hat, or his helmet, his horned helm, if you will. and walks up to her and just kind of takes her face and says, "You're as beautiful as the day that we were separated." I think is the quote, and that was a really nice moment. He says, "You're as beautiful as the day I lost you," and he kisses her, and this reunion is really beautiful, and it was good to see. So naturally, ignoring the orders of Stoic, the rest of the, not really kids anymore, but Astrid and Fishlegs and the rest of them go off to chase Hiccup and Toothless and rescue them. Of course, they're not in need of rescuing yet, and they get captured by the dragon catchers and brought before Draco, who is able to subdue dragons. I forget which one it was, but the dragon's breathing fire at him, and he's got his cloak of +10 fire resistance. It's actually made of dragon skin, and it blocks the fire really, really effectively. And he is able to basically subdue the dragon. It just kind of steps on its mouth, and he has this way with the dragons. And again, it makes him a really kind of terrifying antagonist for the movie. This person who, rather than like Hiccup does, works with the dragons as partners. He absolutely dominates them. And I thought that scene was done well. So it was also fun to see Toothless when he's playing with the baby dragons. They're kind of jumping on him and they're biting his tail and stuff. And some of the interactions between Toothless and Cloudjumper were great again. I really like to see the dragons interacting with each other. There's a scene where Stoic and the mother are reconnecting, and he starts whistling this song, and he's singing to her, and they're singing together. And in this song, this scene, he's really humanized to me. I mean, even with the gray hairs, up to this point, he's been larger than life kind of superhero. I mean, the guy's basically Thor. And in this scene, you could really see the wrinkles in his face, and the gray in his hair was becoming more apparent, and it really humanized him for me, and I appreciated it. And as they're dancing, and as Hiccup is watching them dance, I'm thinking in the back of my mind, there's absolutely no way these three go back to Berk and they form a happy family. It's not going to happen. The narrative is not going to allow that much happiness in the movie. And I said, of course I was wrong, I said I think they're going to kill the mother just as they meet her again, just as he's reconnected with her. They're going to kill her off, and he's going to learn a lesson from her or something like that. But I was wrong about that one. But I was right that the three of them are not going to make it back to Berk together. So we go from this emotional high to an emotional low. Right at that moment, Draco shows up with his dragon army, and he starts pummeling the mountain. And the battle was well done. I thought it was just as good as the battle at the end of How to Train Your Dragon. But it was, I feel like for me, the stakes were higher, because now we have Hiccup and his mother and all these dragons who, I mean, in the first movie were sort of the antagonists. Now each dragon's life sort of mattered to me more, and it was real clash of the titans when Draco and Stoic went head to head, these two unstoppable Viking juggernauts, and then the Ice King and the Alpha, who is of course the king dragon that Draco had sort of, I think he was swimming underwater under his ship. Really, really powerful clash of the titans there. So to see those two pairs going head to head was really great, and I felt that the scene was handled really well. The mother and Toothless are doing their best to kind of turn the tide of the battle, but the Alpha has a superpower where he unfortunately kills the Ice King, and that right there sort of sends shockwaves out through the rest of the dragons. And he's able to do this thing. It's almost like telepathy, where he can control the dragons with his mind. And it was similar to, I guess, the king at the end of the first one, who was able to call all the dragons back to him. I don't particularly like the giant dragons. Even in the first one, I mean, the thing could never fly, first of all, but it's a fantasy movie, so I'll give him that. But just the concept of a dragon that large, I'd like to know more about like the lore behind them and sort of what their deal is, because I don't think it's, even in the first movie, sustainable to feed something that large. I mean, the ocean would have no fish left in it if this thing had lunch. So now there's obviously 3 of them total. There's the one from the first movie, and then the Ice King and the Alpha. And I would have preferred that they be scaled down a little bit, maybe 4 times the size of Toothless, just as an example. I think that would have been a little bit more engaging for me to have these than to have these giant titans. I don't know that they belong in the world specifically, but it was well done. The animation was great. They're terrifying to look at, and it was good to see how the Ice King was definitely more approachable and let the babies kind of play with him, whereas the Alpha mirrors Draco perfectly in that he has no mercy, and he sort of lives just to dominate. So, of course, I wish Stoic and Draco could have settled it between them, but they get separated, and the Alpha takes over Toothless's mind and actually forces him to kill Stoic. Now, this I did not see coming. I thought it was the mother was going to get killed, but Stoic dies at the hands of Toothless. Of course, it wasn't his fault. He was being sort of mind controlled, but still, that was pretty hard to take. I was just staring at the screen. I couldn't believe what I just saw. Stoic, obviously, very, very important character, but for Hiccup's journey, for his hero's journey, he can't rely on his father anymore. He has to step up now and become the new chief. So, with his father gone, he has to go back and lead his people. So, I understand from a narrative perspective why it had to happen, but it was tough to take. Like in the first Star Wars, when we lose Obi-Wan, we couldn't have Luke relying and leaning on Obi-Wan the entire time. Luke has to go out on his own. But it didn't have, even for me, that scene, because, think about it, at the point we'd only known Obi-Wan for about 45 minutes. Whereas with Stoic, we had known him for a movie and almost 2 full movies, and we've seen them grow together. We've seen, at this point, Stoic as a younger man with Hiccup as a baby. We've seen kind of how Hiccup was raised and the pressures that he put on Hiccup, but also how he didn't do it through violence and threats. He did it through love. He just wanted what was best for his son. I thought Stoic was a great character, and he loved his son, and he was there for his son, and he just wanted what was best for him. Even if sometimes he was a little bit misguided, he didn't understand his son all the time, but he learned to. Stoic learned to understand his son, and I appreciated his character arc as well, that he was able to change and grow. And, I think the narrative for a different writer or for a different story might have been handled differently. And they might have had Stoic, rebel against Hiccup when he brings the dragons back and not give in. And, of course, that's what Draco did in this movie. He didn't want to know anything about it. He said, no, let me show you something. And he shows him how the Alpha can control anything. And this friendship he built with Toothless is worth nothing against the power of the Alpha. But I was glad that they didn't have Stoic turn out that way. Stoic took the step, grew as a character, understood his son, and he passed too soon. But now it's up to Stoic to lead his people. So I thought for sure. I was hopeful that Hiccup could negotiate with Draco and barter some kind of a peace, but this person was pure evil. So. Right, the heart of a chief, but the soul of a dragon. I liked that a lot too. So the baby dragons don't listen to the Alpha, so they're able to ride the baby dragons back to Berk, because of course Draco and the Alpha and the army of dragons are going back to Berk to basically take over. And I thought for sure, thinking about the 3-act structure, thinking about the narrative of the movie so far, I thought for sure it was going to end right there, and on this low note, just like Empire did. And I remember thinking, I need to see How to Train Your Dragon 3. It doesn't come out till 2017, but I want to see it now. I want to see Draco get his comeuppance. I want to see the Alpha destroyed. But we didn't have to wait. And I thought for sure when they were riding the baby dragons into the sunset, it was going to end right there, but it didn't. We go back to Berk for the final confrontation. And through friendship and through trust, Toothless and Hiccup worked together to defeat not only Draco, but the Alpha. And it was some great action scenes. It was great to see them working together as a team. I was afraid when Draco was riding Hiccup that we wouldn't see when Draco was riding Toothless, we wouldn't see Toothless and Hiccup together again until the 3rd movie. And I was ready for that too. I thought for sure the credits were going to roll, but we go back to Berk for the final confrontation. And the scene where Toothless, I keep calling Toothless Hiccup for some reason. When Toothless is on the ledge and he's facing the alpha head to head, and they're going to see which one's going to dominate the other. And Toothless learned more about himself. He learned about more of the power that he has. He's growing up too. It's stated that they're about the same age, Hiccup and Toothless, and he's firing one fireball after another. I know they're not really fireballs, but whatever his blue sort of power charges, his shockwave that he sends out, one after another. And it breaks the concentration of the alpha, and all the other dragons get behind Toothless, and they're all firing at the alpha, and one of his big tusks falls off. One of his big, tusk is the best word for it. I think falls off, and he knows he's got to retreat. And Toothless won. Toothless is now the alpha. I thought that was really great, and the scene spoke to me as well about how Hiccup has to grow up and sort of come into his own. And Toothless is given the same opportunity to grow up and come into his own. He's damaged like Hiccup is, and they're sort of, what's the right word? Their disability, I guess. They're a mirror of each other. They're symbiotic. They need each other, but they're alike as well. So I was really glad to see that they finished this part of the story in the second movie. We beat Draco. He's not dead. We beat Alpha. He's not dead. Will they come back for part 3? I'm not sure. But in the end, Hiccup becomes the chief that he knows he needs to be. He becomes the chief that Burke needs. And in the spirit of his father, as they fire the arrows at Stoic's boat, and it's sailing out to sea, that chapter of his life ends. Now he has to become a man, and he has to lead his people. What's up for the third movie? I really am excited to see it. Obviously, I love the franchise. I'm assuming that the world expands even more, that the mother is going to be put into danger at some point. He's going to learn from his mother and maybe even have to come into confrontation with her. I'm assuming there's going to be a female Night Fury, and Toothless is going to find more of his own kind, because we haven't, still to this one, have not seen another Night Fury. When we came to the Dragon Mountain where the Ice King was presiding, I thought for sure there was going to be a couple Night Furies flying around, but no. So my guess is we see another Night Fury, and of course the books end with why there are no more dragons in the world, and the director stated that he is going to tackle that, and that's how it's going to end. I'd like it if it went Beowulf, and now the next movie is 20 years in the future, and now Hiccup is getting old. Maybe Hiccup is even has a little gray, and he thinks of his father, and it's been many, many years of peace. And now there's a new threat to Burke. And how they're going to remove the dragons from the world, I don't even want to see it, because I want to live in a world with dragons. And the movie ends with that, Burke bookend again. This is Burke, and we have our dragons. And I really appreciated that echo of itself, too, and the bookends that closed the first and the second movie. Could there even be a danger coming from inside Burke? Could there be someone in Burke who, like I suggested, in a darker timeline, Stoic might have been this character, who doesn't like the dragons and who wants them out of his land, who actually fights against Hiccup and wants to get rid of the dragons? I would hope not, because it seems like they've integrated themselves fairly well into the society. But that is one way that they could go with it. So I'm really glad that we didn't end the movie on that down note, and that we were able to bring the story back to Burke and close Chapter 2 properly and not end it on a real dour cliffhanger. This is still a family movie. I know a lot of kids enjoy it, and it wouldn't have been right to leave them hanging like that. I mean, I can imagine that Stoic, the way he died, definitely raising some questions from kids and parents having to sort of explain what happened there, which is fine. I think it's good that in the end it ended on a note of victory. It ended on a happy note, and it ends with that bookend, like I keep talking about, where we learn more about Burke and we have our dragons. So, looking forward to 2017, How to Train Your Dragon 3. Until then, thanks very much. So, I just got done watching How to Train Your Dragon 2.